This is Hannibal here with a special interview with a former United States Navy personnel served on the aircraft carrier USS Independence from 1994 to 1998. He's also a retired Clifton, New Jersey police sergeant, 23 years of service total. Ed Holster, how are you doing today, sir?
Good, Hannibal. How are you?
I'm doing great, but I'm starting to get a little concerned about whatever's going on here. So maybe you could ease my concerns by you being on the ground there in New Jersey. What's going on in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I can't ease your concerns because they're not giving us any answers. So, I've seen, I've watched a lot of information. I've watched people on your channel, and I think anyone's guess is as good as mine. From what that interview with John Kirby, the defense, personnel, that really just set everything, off into some questionable territory by complete denial and stating that they don't know what's going on. So we're here still waiting for more information. And unfortunately, I think the scary part is the longer it goes, these things just disappear. Then where are we going to go as far as finding out their origin or what they were up to?
Yes, and I just watched an interview with another New Jersey mayor that actually got some footage of this. And he seems to be convinced, without directly saying it, he thinks that they are ours because his reasons given was because we said that they're not a threat, we're not shooting them down, and we're not shutting down the airspace. But he thinks they might be up there due to some type of threat that is not being told to us. What do you think about that theory?
Well, it's a great theory, or even something in that vicinity, whether there is a threat or whether they're prepared to investigate a threat if there ever is one. I saw, I believe there was a Navy SEAL that was speaking to the New York Post, and he insinuated that they might be collecting cellular data, that they might be hovering over all these areas. And again, that could be either looking for a specific threat, or that could be preparing to look for a threat either overseas or during some other situation. But I mean, those are good thoughts. I mean, the way that they said that it is not a foreign entity. I don't know if you saw, but probably about 3 or 5 minutes ago, for the first time, because I've been waiting for to see if Donald Trump would make a statement, and he, for the first time, he addressed it, and he kind of there's a tweet here from Truth Social where he's kind of implies that he thinks the government has knowledge of what it is, and they need to let us know. I think a concern, like I said before, that they will delay this until they're gone, and then we won't have any answers. I think there is, if it is known to our government who's doing this, they could be just biding time. So, they keep saying we're looking, we're doing all we can, while these drones do what they're need to do, and then they'll be gone. So,
do you have the tweet on there that I could you read exactly what it says?
Yeah.
Because I was probably creating this stream when that news came out.
It says, mystery drone sightings all over the country. Can this really be happening without our government's knowledge? I don't think so. Let the public know, and now, otherwise shoot them down. DJT. And that was earlier today. It was at 2:30.
That's interesting because it was over his golf course. I was kind of wondering why he took this long to say something, because you're right in that area too, aren't you, Morris County? Yes. He has an airport that he flies into there, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So this could technically have to do with reconnaissance on him as well. I guess he's probably not in that area right now, maybe for good reason.
Yeah, I wouldn't think now with all this going on, he's probably elsewhere. I mean, we're only about a month away from his inauguration, which honestly, when this first started happening, I thought it was very peculiar that it began right after the election. I said, this is very interesting timing that these drones came around after he won the election and then before his inauguration, coming in, in January 20th. So here we are. And I was, like you, curious. I'm like, why have we not heard? He'll take any opportunity to tweet or address the current government usually. And he was delaying. He was quite silent. And Elon Musk was also silent on the topic. And then now finally today he says this. So this is new information, that he obviously has not been advised of what it is, if it is in fact something that they know.
Do you find it weird that Elon Musk, who's working for Donald Trump, or I guess the official new regime hasn't come in yet, but he hasn't said anything yet either. He's still making his regular tweets. And if anyone knows what's happening in the sky, it might be him with all the satellites he has up there.
I completely agree. I've been wondering what both of them would have to say. I mean, they are all over social media, especially Elon Musk, and he has been, but not about this topic. So, I mean, he'd be a source as far as technology if we needed to speak to someone that had any knowledge possibly on what we could do if we don't possess the technology to track these drones or get information. What's also fascinating to me, have you noticed that still, and this has been going on for weeks, we do not have a very clear photograph or an extremely clear video from like a government source of one of these drones. It's everyone's cell phone camera. And to me, that's another big red flag that they don't want us to have the photos and do not want us and the media to all have a very, clear, detailed photo of the exact drone that's flying around, because that might give us some insight, I would think, to where they're coming from. So that's another factor that I find interesting.
Do you believe the Pentagon representative yesterday saying they're going based off of the cell phone footage and citizen footage that we've all seen, and based off of that, they can tell us that there's no threat involved? Or do you think they have more information? I mean, it seems ridiculous to think that we would even believe that.
Yeah. I mean, as far as them, the interesting thing of saying it's no threat is like what you said earlier. A mayor had stated, if they're saying there is no threat, then that could mean they know where these vehicles are coming from, or it could be sort of defensive talk. I know even in the police force, when you're going to say something to the public, you do want to calm them, and when you don't know of a threat specifically, you will say there's no known threat. This doesn't mean that everyone is completely safe. It just is a sort of technicality on words that we have no known evidence that there is a threat. So they're not lying to you on the information that they have. It's just a sort of technicality of the words that they're using.
Have you heard anything from President Biden? I find it very weird that he's been off the radar this whole time and he's not giving any type of statement. And whether it's a threat or not, people seem to be very interested in this topic, and it seems to be a growing concern. So it's strange that there hasn't been a peep out of him.
Absolutely shocking. In fact, that's, like I said, it was Trump and even Biden. It's like, where is the current so-called president while this is going on? Now, I did watch, it was maybe 2 hours ago, it was John Kirby interviewed by Fox News. This was only 2 hours ago, so it was the same man from the press conference yesterday. And he did state that President Biden is aware, he's involved, and he's sending more equipment and technology and personnel to New Jersey to try to get more information on this. So that was even the first time that I had heard his name even mentioned in association with this. So I would really hope that within a day or two, we get a press conference or something where he can address it. But my concern is that this is all just a delay and a delay and a delay to let them do what they're doing because they know, or to have them leave the area.
Now, it was reported one crash earlier today. I don't think anything was found, or at least has been publicly released yet. Have you heard anything from your research?
No, I have been looking into. I've seen the one. There were two reported overnight, and I believe it was people either manipulating different videos, or there was a small plane, perhaps on I-78. But people are taking the footage, and then they're obviously putting drone crash over that. So that those two were false alarms. And then there's this one, and I believe you reported on it from possibly Hillsborough. And I looked over the footage, and a lot of these videos will say possible, drone crash or drone landing. They'll use different verbiages. There was one, and the news report confirmed it. I don't know the city, but it was a hobby. They said in there it was either a hobby or sport drone. So what I think is happening is people are using their own drones to try to go up, and then those are some of the drones that are crashing and ending up being news stories. But if it's not one of these drones that are the size of a minivan, that's not the incident we're concerned with. So I haven't heard any credible news source yet report on a drone crashing. And let me tell you, as a retired police officer, you can think and imagine that police officers can keep quiet and keep things hush hush, but I'm telling you, if a drone crashed, that is going to leak. And if police officers and firemen, that is going to leak. People are going to know. They're either going to take pictures with their cell phone, which they shouldn't do, but would happen. And they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to tell their families. And it would be a very difficult thing unless federal authorities had come in and took over, or FBI or another agency. If a drone crashed and a local police department responded, there'd be news helicopters over there. You're not going to be able to hide that.
Have you actually seen any of these yourself?
I've seen them not hovering over me like you'll see or I've heard people, I've had friends tell me that it went over their house and it came down low. I have seen them on the angled trajectory away over the horizon, maneuvering. Again, at night all the time. So I've seen them, but I haven't seen them close up enough to really get the look. I mean, and it is usually dark of what they are. So I have seen them though.
When you were in the Navy, how long did you serve for?
Oh, I was there 94 to 98. I was stationed overseas. I was in Japan, Yokosuka, Japan, for 4 years on an aircraft carrier.
Why do you think the Navy is not very open, but they're way more open than the Air Force about UAPs? Do you think that's because a lot of them are water related and there might be more data, or is it just because the Air Force is keeping quiet about it and doesn't want to talk about it as much?
It's a good question. I wouldn't know on the Air Force side of it. I just believe, most likely it's because when a Navy fleet is out at sea, they form a battle section, which is a plethora of ships all spread out, and they all have different roles. And they basically form a web of ships and radar and communication that takes up a huge areas of the ocean. So anything coming within a vicinity of an aircraft carrier at all has to be sort of registered on their equipment. And so I believe it's probably because of their mobility and Air Force being land based. That could be an element too of where these vehicles are going to be sort of caught up. The Navy is more likely possibly going to be there and have these interactions.
What do you think about these Navy ship drone swarms that a lot of people are saying have to be kind of black projects? if they weren't fired on, or perhaps they were fired on and we're just not seeing all the video. We're just seeing the night vision swarm footage.
Oh, so people think it's a black ops kind of thing.
Yeah, as far as why they would allow that type of thing to happen, like I'm talking about the past stuff, not necessarily
Oh, okay,
the
yeah.
stuff that's happened now. I'm sure you've seen it. Jeremy Corbell has put out some videos regarding swarms over ships. They almost look like pyramids, some of them glowing. Why would you say they aren't fired on, or do you think it's just that part of the video is not released?
No, I think what and this is showing us right now that there's that the threat, and possibly even from, again, foreign entities, is actually to have vehicles or weaponry or that are smaller rather than larger. So a lot of the equipment that the military has had in the past has always been, for either a missile or torpedo, another vehicle, another vessel, a ship, etc. And so what the threat seems to be now with these drones is their small size, and there's probably issues with. I mean, what weaponry can you use on a small swarm of drones? I would hope things have advanced since I was in there, but I would bet the smaller they are, and then in those groups, it's probably a challenge. I don't know what like aircraft weaponry would be able to take that down. So that very well could be it.
Someone's asking if you think they could be nuclear sensing drones looking for something.
Yeah, that actually, when I heard that, and that combined with a couple of factors that they're coming low. Okay, so this is why it's whoever is doing this. They specifically needed drones and not planes. Think about it. If they used planes, it wouldn't catch anyone's attention. It would be a home run, really. They can use the planes day, night. We wouldn't know any different, plane to a plane. But they're using a drone because of the way that it gets to travel up and down and left and right, and actually come closer to homes and people that a jet plane can't do. So this tells me that they are trying to get closer to the ground. So when we hear these things, that they're either looking for some sort of a threat, whether it be nuclear detection or even like a camp, as if maybe they had some information people were training at a camp and they're trying to locate that, which I hadn't heard. There's nothing to corroborate, but yeah, that I think that is a direction. There's probably about 5 to 10 really good guesses that you could make, and they'd be a good guess. Again, or it could be training for these things. So it could be an agency that this is what they have, and they're out there, practicing for it.
Interesting. Now, we had the one congressman allege that these were Iran owned but bought from China. Someone's bringing up, why would they have the lights on them? What did you think about that statement from the congressman?
Yeah, I didn't put much validity into that. It just seemed too out there. And it may have even been politically motivated, because I watched the interview with him the following day when he was pressed on where he got that, and he used specific verbiage. He changed it from "there is" and "someone told me there is," and then the next day he added the verbiage "possibly." And so as soon as I heard him add "possibly" the next day, that was him trying to get some credibility back, so that this way he can't be looked at poorly as he's a government official, and he said it the first day as if there was, and he had the information. And now the next day he's saying high up individuals with knowledge are saying possibly. So as soon as I heard him add these little like ifs and maybes the next day, I definitely felt that there was not much credibility to that. But the good thing that came from that is quickly our government had to come out and immediately dispel that and say that our military says that is absolutely not the case. There is no mothership, and that it's not a foreign entity. So in a way, that was a strategy of his to play, of just make the accusation so that they have to immediately deny it. It was a good move, but I didn't hold much validity. Again, just like someone had just said, they put the lights on these. They come at night. They put the lights on, which means they want to be seen. Now, whether they want to be seen for safety of themselves, right, to not get hit by another craft, right, because they have the running red, I believe it's red and green lights that are flashing. So those come on. If it was a foreign entity looking to do harm to us, they could have done it already. They would have done it already, likely, unless it was something even more nefarious. And they wouldn't need to have these safety lights on. So
that is strange for sure. The other thing, Tim Burchett, the Tennessee congressman, I think he's part of the Gang of Eight, about a week ago, he said that they were Chinese. And I haven't heard anything from him since, although he did put that up on his YouTube channel too. But I think without any follow up to it, he may have also changed his stance or been told not to say anything else.
Yeah, that's a good guess too. I mean, China, they had the balloon come over here, so there's always that risk. That these are sort of the ways that they function. They are always looking to gain intel or provoke. It could be proxy. You say China. It could be people living in America perfectly legal, obtaining this information for China or for a foreign entity. In which case, again, the government would be able to say it's not a foreign entity because they're technically, in America or Americans. But if that information is going overseas anyway, that's a foreign entity.
And there was the one Chinese national caught flying one over a Space Force base in California a couple days ago. Do you think that has anything to do with this? Could there be Chinese nationals in this area too? Or do you think that was more of a random thing?
I would think that's random. These are high technology drones. They're large. At least the ones that I've seen on cell videos, it's blurry, but I've had friends tell me it's about the size of a minivan. And I've heard bigger. I've heard the 747. I've heard, these are all, who knows? I can't corroborate these, but I've heard from most people that I've spoken to, they are huge. They are about the size of a minivan. And the technology here, because these reports of them going dark and not being able to be followed, and then some sort of shield that surrounds them, a field, I guess, that the sensors can't pick things up on them. To me, this is coming from a higher standard of entity.
Yeah, and the field seems to affect the pictures because I see a lot of comments. Why, with all of these latest iPhones and Androids, are we still getting blurry pictures? We've seen this reported in a lot of places. Supposedly, well, we don't know what they are, but at least UAPs, there's some type of gravitational field around them, and maybe someone else has this technology as well now.
Yeah. Well, again, that's like I said earlier. Why are there no very clear photos of these? Well, that could be a reason that they only come at night. And I had been wondering that from the very beginning. I said to myself, they're not hiding, but they're not here during the day in broad daylight. Now, that could be because whenever they go back to wherever they're going to, daytime would be way easier they couldn't cloak, they couldn't shut those lights off when they head back to wherever their base is to recharge. They're saying these can last 6 or 7 hours. So that tells me, that they're coming at night for that reason, so that when they do need to head off, they can't be tracked by, say, like a state police helicopter or even some sort of camera.
How much do you think one of those things would cost, like the highest tech drone? Because we're seeing probably at least 60 of these over the past month, just by the different types of them. But like this would be a very expensive operation, right?
Well, actually, I wouldn't have the knowledge of that myself, but prior to this interview, I watched a Fox News interview of John Kirby, and the interviewer did state that military personnel were sort of theorizing the exact type of drone likely that is in the private sector from these tech companies. And from what she was saying, she didn't give a dollar, but she says this is upper end technology. This is not anything that has been seen or utilized prior to this. So, I mean, I couldn't even guess. I couldn't even imagine.
There's somebody watching that really wants us to watch this this TikTok short video that appears. There could be a drone shooting at something. You already told me, and I agree with this, that there's a lot of fake things coming out. But let's take a look at this and get your opinion on it.
Okay.
I guess there appears to be something moving in the sky and some sort of flashing lights at the bottom.
I would be really. It's in a distance. You obviously don't see much. I'd put money on that if I had to bet right now. That is a helicopter doing drills, and those are tracer rounds, so they can. And he's shooting at a set up target. They're probably doing some sort of practice. I would bet that's a helicopter based tracer round in training.
Do you think if this was all like a black ops operation, at some point they would just say, this is a top secret operation, we can't say anything else, you guys are going to have to understand for now? Or would that even be giving away too much information?
Yeah, I mean, we call it black ops, but that's the cool word for it. But I'm sure the government has something where, it's a paramilitary organization. So what the government will do is have a private paramilitary corporation do this for them. So they have what's called plausible deniability. They get to say, we have nothing to do with it. It's not a military craft. We're going to look into it, because they can get away with saying, technically, we don't know which one you're talking about. You're sending us all these videos. What are you talking about? So, yeah, very well could be a private entity that is actually working for our federal government. And the best way to keep a secret is to have as few people know about it as possible. So these people saying they don't know could be telling the truth, but it's because they are not allowed to know. I would, there's a military base very close by to here, and someone was asking me questions about that, and I said, and he says, well, of 3,000 people or the soldiers on the base, wouldn't someone have something to say? I said, listen, they're not going to tell every soldier. They know better than that. If anyone on that military base had any clue what was going on and to lay off, it would be one at most. And then all that one person has to do is put out some blanket classified order saying, do not engage, and this is how we're going to handle it, and that's it. So, no, they wouldn't need to tell every single person what they're doing. But, back to what you said about the black ops situation, or a paramilitary corporation, is they would unfortunately likely be biding their time, let them finish, and then they're going to go away. Possibly, I'm saying that is one outcome that kind of stinks, because we'll get no answers, and this will be like the mystery of, until next time, unfortunately.
With Donald Trump mentioning in his speech they should perhaps be shot down. I am from Canada, I'm just in the US for now. Could he, at this point, and he hasn't been inaugurated yet, could he actually pull whatever strings he needs to order something like that to be done if he just gets fed up with it? Or does he 100% have to wait until the inauguration?
Oh, absolutely no. He would absolutely have to wait till the inauguration. He has no, that would be making some real risks if he made any sort of real attempt to, from a technically civilian standpoint, try to have a military operation take place. I think shooting them down is constantly brought up, and I'll hear a lot of politicians, local, and I'll hear mayors, and I've heard it a lot, and I don't disagree with it, but there's a couple risks with quote unquote shooting them down. You know, for one, it's where does it land? Is it going to land on a house? Is it going to land on someone's car? And the government and the federal government does not want that for obvious reasons. But that is not something that they're going to do, is put people at risk with just shooting one down. So they need an ideal situation. They'd need farmlands or out over the mountains possibly. But I don't believe these vehicles are necessarily going there. I think they're going where people are. They could do something over the ocean, but also I'm sure on their end, not on necessarily ours, there are some concerns that we don't know 100% that they aren't manned. We're assuming there's no individuals inside, but they're the size of a minivan. And if you listen to John Kirby's speech yesterday, he did state on multiple occasions that some of these are manned vehicles. And that might, when I heard him say that, I thought, is that what's going on? And that's why they don't want to shoot someone down, because there is a person inside these.
Interesting. And someone's bringing up, could they contain drugs or bomb-making materials?
Oh, you know, when this first went down, my brain started going to different places. They could contain. When I was in the Navy, we did chemical, biological, and radiological defense. That was my specialty. Which is, you know, nerve gas, blister agents, and things of the such. So certainly they could carry things, they could drop things, they could plant things. I was even thinking of viral issues, just like we had with COVID, but even something, you know, obviously more advanced than that. There could be even something that would attack our seeds, something that could get into our farmlands and into our food that are dropped from these. The concern being how low they do come, and the fact that they need drones and not planes who's ever doing this. So yeah, certainly there could be items carried, you know, in these vehicles.
What do you think of the people that are putting out there the UAP visitors from either some base under the water? Because a lot of them they're all, I think, being seen disappearing off onto the ocean, from what I understand, or from somewhere else. What do you think of that hypothesis?
I did. Besides the Jeff Van Drew stating there was an Iranian mothership, I did personally believe, when I heard 50 of them, I think, tracked the Coast Guard, I said to myself, right off one of our beaches here on the shore, I did say to myself, well, where are they recharging? And let me tell you something, a ship of some sort would be a great place, but these are as big as a minivan. That would be a very, very large ship if 50 or more are all going to be landing on some sort of flight deck for them. So, but I did think when I heard that they were going out to the ocean, because there's nothing out there to be monitoring for them. So the fact that they are going out towards the shore and the ocean did lead me to believe that there could be a vessel out there that they land on.
From your time in the Navy, I don't know what you're able to talk about or not, but we keep hearing in recent years and General, or what was it, Tim Gallaudet. I forget his exact title, but he's way up there as far as command. He's a commander. Tim Gallaudet, he recently spoke to Congress about USOs, underwater submerged objects. Did you ever see anything like that, unidentified submerged objects, during your time in the Navy?
No, I was on a carrier, and an aircraft carrier is usually in the center of, like I said, a large web of ships. And the reason for that is so basically it has a defense shell of radar and sonar and other ships all sort of traveling around it. So anything that would have been anything like that it was any threat, at least with the technology at the time. This is 1994 to 1998. Anything that at those times that were a legitimate threat would have been picked up by the ships furthest out, and that's sort of how they protect the carrier. So, I mean, we had seen, objects, which you could call UFOs, but strange objects in the sky. But with all the jets that we had flying and all the jets that were flying around, it was always something difficult to pick up. And I worked a lot below decks. I worked down in engine rooms. So I worked sometimes 7 decks down, so even below the ocean level. So I didn't spend a lot of time on the flight deck, which would have been where you would have to have been to see some of these things. So that's the limit of my experience with that.
And Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, that's who he was. Someone saying air support for invading ground troops. What do you think for the people that are saying this is a distraction for something that could be going on the ground, and they're making us all look at the skies? And also to answer that guy's question, what do you think of those thoughts?
Well, one of the theories that I think of, maybe 8 to 10, there's one that is simply this, which is, the least scary of probably any of the theories, is that this is going to be an ongoing thing for whatever reason that they have that they're not telling us, and they want to start getting us accustomed to it. So what they're going to do is they're going to do it in New Jersey, and we're going to go through all this, and they're going to say what they're going to say, and they're going to conclude their investigations. Maybe they go away. Maybe most of them go away, but some stay. And what they do is they condition us to say, okay, well, this is the way of the world now, that there are these drones up above, and they're no threat. They didn't kill anyone. They didn't harm anyone. Let's not freak out. There certainly is a possibility in one of the 8 to 10 options that it is simply there to just sort of condition us to be used to them. As far as preparing for a ground, I couldn't see a ground invasion of the United States. Could it be again in one of the options, a foreign entity, possibly, even though they've said that is not, analyzing for different areas that they could or would strike? Sure. But the reason that doesn't really line up is with any of the weapons that China or Russia is using, it's not going to matter. They're ICBMs and nuclear weapons. If anything ever went off, I wouldn't see the big powers that be using anything that even needs a target. They know where to hit. They have satellites, which is another thing to keep in mind. These big dogs have satellites. So what they need 40 or 50 feet above our houses is a great question.
Yeah, and then there's the theory that it could be visitors from elsewhere that have assets here hovering around to protect something like that happening with all the time. Because this all really started, or at least picked up, when President Biden, I guess, gave the okay for Ukraine to use missiles. That's when it seemed to start increasing. And that's one of the theories out there, that they might not necessarily be there to protect humanity, but to protect whatever they happen to be doing here, if it is visitors from somewhere else or crypto terrestrials, quote unquote.
Yeah, I do. That did strike me, that the timing of his approval to use those ICBMs from Ukraine into Russia and this event were quite peculiar. But again, that was also interesting, the timing post-election. Both of those things took place after Donald Trump won. So there's a lot of things going on in this country right now that I believe they're trying to get it finished before Trump is in office on January 20th. So I'm not saying that I believe these things, that these things are nefarious, but I'd be shocked if there are drones flying overhead when Donald Trump takes office. I'd be shocked they're not gone before then. And that doesn't mean that they're up to no good, but they wouldn't want him to have the knowledge to know to either tell us or do something about it.
Someone wants to know if you put a helicopter near one of these. Like, we actually heard there was a police helicopter hovering right above one of these 8-foot drones, I believe, and apparently they got too scared. It was a police helicopter. No real details other than they got too scared and stopped. But could you, in theory, put a net and try and capture one of these drones, or are they just way too advanced for a police helicopter to do something like that?
So I did hear that, and I heard that report, but I didn't hear all of the details. And then when I got all of the details that was early on, I kind of understood. They're as big as a minivan, and a collision between the rotor on top of a typical police helicopter and one of those would not end well for the helicopter. And from what I know in that story, they have gone lights out. So that helicopter probably had all these lights. The drone had its flashing lights. It got close, and then the drone went black. So they were probably freaked out, saying, "Where did this thing go?" And it probably did duck out. Remember, a helicopter has to sort of travel as its propellers are bringing it forward. This drone can go up, down, left, right. That's the advantage of the drone. So, when I did hear that, I was like, you're scared. I mean, you're the police. You're supposed to be protecting people. You should be putting yourself at risk. But if it's also dumb risk, and it's also, we don't have the equipment to do this, then I actually agree that it wasn't worth the risk, because they're just ill-equipped. So you wouldn't go into a gunfight on the losing end of it intentionally. You bail out and you come back with the right equipment. Now, as far as could a helicopter grab one of these? No, I don't believe a helicopter could. When it first started happening, it crossed my mind that they're going to need to use some sort of completely new device, which they might need to start working on now. I was almost thinking of a large airplane with it, like a mouth opening that they could almost swallow it up and just sort of proceed past the drone, because they are going to shut their lights off. So you're going to need some bright lights, and you're going to need some speed, and almost like a whale when it swallows fish. That's what kind of crossed my mind as a way that they could grab one without taking it down and risking, injuries below.
And that reminds me, as far as where the drones are going, I have seen a video that was shown by Ross Coldhart today on News Nation. You may have seen it, of one of the drones, a smaller one going into a bigger one. So could that be one of the ways they're getting rid of these? The small ones go into the bigger one, and the bigger one takes off and drops somewhere to recharge.
That's a fascinating element. And again, the things that the facts that lend itself towards these things being at least questionable is that they only come at night, and then at one point in time at night they do turn their lights off. So they could certainly be connecting to each other, carrying to others. Who even knows when it blacks out? There could be a drone that comes to charge them, or another vehicle that can come charge them in a remote location. So, yeah, certainly a possibility.
What do you think the difference is between this and the Chinese spy balloon? Because it seemed like with the Chinese spy balloon, it was in the news only for a couple of days. They shot it down. They showed the debris. Then there was the 3 others that they never really showed any evidence that they were shot down. There was one picture of the one shot down over the Yukon released to the Canadian media that didn't actually look like a spy balloon. I'm sure you've probably seen it.
Yeah.
But like, they seem to deal with that real fast. Biden didn't really comment on it too much, but it was dealt with fast, and it seems like this is being dragged out.
Yeah, and again, so these two facts, when you put these two together, we do know it was Chinese. We do know it was a spy balloon, and they shot it down. So this tells me they're dilly-dallying here. They're wasting their time, or they're certainly taking their time. They're even running a little bit of interference here to buy time, and they're slowing things down. So this does tell me, I don't know whether it's a positive, that it most likely isn't directly known to them that these are Chinese, and they knew the balloon was.
Good point. Someone, I don't know, I think they're making a joke here, but we shouldn't worry about drones coming from the ocean or under sustained fire from war zones.
Oh no, we should be concerned. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, what percentage chance do you think this could be a foreign entity?
Well, certainly there. It's certainly there. The only thing that tells me it isn't is our federal government. But I have heard it from numerous, and not just one individual. I've heard it from numerous individuals, and the only thing I'm going to say is if it was certain foreign entities, they'd love it to be the case. If this was Iran, I believe there's some urge to take action in Iran. If this was Russian, I mean, they love to say it. They love to blame Russia. At least the current administration, I believe, and I'm not saying it wouldn't be. I'm just simply saying that I believe if it was certain foreign entities, they would love to put the blame on someone if it was them. And it doesn't mean that it isn't. So again, my only thing that I would say I would lean that it's not is just because of multiple sources from our federal government in various, either both military and the National Security Advisor have said they have no information that it is from a foreign entity. And the lights being on is another thing. The lights, like I couldn't see an aggressor of a foreign entity wanting us to see them, and wanting all this to go on. It's possible. I just don't see it.
Now, here's something that maybe you can address. That is one of the things that was being brought up by people trying to downplay this. It seems like it's less of an option in recent days, but the people saying it's an online drone hobby club, possibly from the dark web.
Well, there would be some rich hobby club people. I don't know where they're at and where they get the money to fly the highest technology drones going. But I don't. I will keep saying your guess is as good as mine, because it's all conjecture at this point. We're putting little pieces together, and things are said here and things are said there, and we're looking at little different facts, and we're coming up with maybe which way we sort of lean. But still, overall, it could be any of these things. Sure.
What do you think that it could be? I mean, this is another thing that it could be visitors potentially trying to start a conflict between countries here. That was something that was thrown out by some somewhat credible people about a week or so ago when this was still taken off.
I mean, it's like I said, it's there's probably about 8 to 10 options. That one, the only reason is that one is out of the realm of current scientific evidence, standards. That would be something we'd be reaching a little bit beyond what is known currently factually. But I wouldn't completely rule it out. I would just say currently, with looking at them and seeing the way they don't move with any otherworldly abilities. They do their speed is not anything that is shocking to the eye or anything like that. They do have an appearance to be man-made. The ways they move, very expensive, but they do appear to be man-made. So again, it doesn't rule it out, but it's just not something it's not the top one that I would go with.
Can we get some safety lights on your beard? How long did it take you to grow that?
I started this one in April of 2021. I've cut it a few times, but yeah, we're there, man.
What made you retire from the police force in New Jersey?
It was my plan all along. There's a you reach a certain point in a time, and you can collect the pension. And after COVID and a lot of things that went down in 2019 and 2020, the job had changed, rules and regulations and things like that. It wasn't the same. It wasn't the same job that it was when I first got hired. And then a lot of the people that I had worked with. Those people had gone on. People that were older than me, they'd moved on. They'd retired. So it was my time to go. It's what I wanted to do.
Someone's asking if there's been any sightings of these within the middle of the United States. I mean, there's been small ones, but it seems like it's concentrated in the New Jersey, New York area. We're hearing Maryland now too, and possibly Connecticut.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm seeing a little bit today, little drips and drabs of I had heard Connecticut, and today was the first, early today was where I heard Maryland. And, those are little interesting tidbits too, that it's not only New Jersey. And so if they're looking for something, or they're like either collecting data or analyzing, there is a possibility that they will fan out, and they can either go up or down the East Coast. It is interesting that it's near the coast, right? And that's another element that I think gives that coastal or that ocean or that ship idea a little bit more credibility, is that it's New Jersey, it's Philadelphia. They come in from the ocean, and they do what they got to do, and then potentially go back. It will be very interesting if we do start seeing these exact drones out in Middle America, because that would rule out the ship, the ocean, and where they're recharging. They would need to be going to a base or a location there, at least, well, again, from the guesses that we can make. So currently, as far as I know, it's right in this northeast area and predominantly New Jersey, but it is moving around. We got Philly, Maryland, and Connecticut.
And now that you mention it, there's been some things in California and Oregon too, but that's way closer to the ocean than here in Kansas or anywhere else in Middle America.
Yeah, I did hear about something in Oregon recently, last couple of weeks.
It was actually recorded.
Yes.
On radar. The whole conversation was released, and they actually used the term UFOs.
Yes. Yep.
So that seemed to be actually more definitively UAPs, where this looks like stuff that could potentially be man-made, because there's the 5 observables, and potentially we're only seeing 2 of the 5 observables.
That's correct. These could be, you said paramilitary. They could be a private. When it first happened, I wasn't really that interested. Like the first day or two, just like anything, I felt a lot of people were overreacting because I didn't see them, and it hadn't been this constant reporting, and no one had stated anything yet. I made some assumptions or guesses from just hearing little rumblings. Oh, did you hear about these drones? Did you hear about these drones? I was like, oh, well, FedEx could be, Google doing a new version of Google Earth. So I figured, something is going to come out, and they're going to say, calm down. It's this company doing, such and such. But then it lingered on. Then there were more drones. Then I had seen them. Then my friend said one of them was going over his house. And then we got that John Kirby interview where they just said they're not a known entity. And now here we are.
Someone was asking earlier, how long do you think it's going to be before the truth is revealed?
That's a really good question. On this interview today with John Kirby, that was the question he was pressed. He was directly pressed on, can you give us a timetable? And he used this word, and he tap danced around it, and he says he doesn't want to lie, and that would be a lie if he gave a timetable. And the interviewer said 24 hours, 48 hours. Can you give us something so that we can have a sort of expectation? And he couldn't give anything. So like I said, there's a real concern that they will not give us an explanation of what they are, and they very well could leave.
For the person asking, some of the 5 observables, at least for the New Jersey area ones, it's cloaking and instantaneous acceleration, but they all haven't displayed instantaneous acceleration, just some.
That's right. Like I said, I've also heard these stories that some of them are different sizes, some of them were smaller and bigger. I haven't seen those, so there could be like different models, so to speak, that are maybe have a different task assigned, that they perform.
We're definitely seeing some orb-like videos of almost like Christmas balls of light changing color, changing side. Morphing is one of the things that's also being seen, and I heard Ross Coulthard say it today, that one of the things that visitor craft is alleged to be able to do is to morph into more. I know this sounds like a science fiction movie, so this might be way out there, but morph shapes or cloaking, as we just said. That's considered one of the observables. But yeah, there's definitely the more traditional drone-like ones that are making a sound, and then there's some that don't appear to be making sound and look more like balls.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that someone did mention, and this is a little out there and in sci-fi, but it's at least interesting. And someone was saying, what if these drones is our federal government or a paramilitary organization, and they are out looking for a UFO or other entities that had come down. So they are ours, but they're looking for another craft that had come down. So that's just an interesting sort of out there take.
Yeah, and one thing I know is here in Kansas, I did see something for about 3 nights here last week. It appeared like there was some unusual activity, and then as you looked around, and these were more like orb-like craft, I guess you could call them, that were accelerating, and some of them were changing shapes and sizes. But then as I looked around, it seemed to be like within a large area of space, there was multiple more military-looking drones watching whatever these things were doing. There is McConnell Air Force Base around here. The whole thing could have just been a military operation, so I'm not saying it was anything other than there was definitely unusual stuff, because I was walking out of the gym and someone pointed to me and said, hey, look at what's going on. And it's all these bizarre moving things in the sky. So there was definitely, if it was something weird going on, it was being observed by us.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So a couple of people have asked about satellites on here. If we can detect a license plate from a satellite, why are we not able to see these?
That's a good question. That is a good question. That they're clearly using technology. Again, I cannot believe that we do not have, and I'm sure, well, we the people don't, and the media doesn't, but I'm sure someone does. And if these things are being investigated, there must be a military vehicle that can get detailed footage. Again, unless the technology is beyond comprehension, either detailed photos or detailed video. I would anticipate and hope that in the coming week or two, something like that will be released to the media of an actual, like, clear photo, possibly, of one of these things.
I find it weird because you may or may not have seen it. I interviewed the Nightcrawler Eye on the Sky people that have invested hundreds of thousands in drone detecting equipment, and they haven't even yet traveled to New Jersey due to other commitments. Which to me is just crazy, because it's like, this is the greatest opportunity to get footage. But I think as time goes on and people are seeing this is going on every night, you're going to have more people with money. And you would also think news stations that are funded with millions of dollars would invest in someone really good to go out there with thermal cameras to try and capture something, because that would equal ratings to me. So it's bizarre that hasn't happened.
Absolutely. I mean, it is equaling ratings currently. I mean, this story is popping off, and I'm seeing it everywhere, and it's covered quite a bit all throughout the day. But you're right, though, with the money that these either agencies or private companies have. I'm just shocked that this is where we're at with either ineptitude or lack of interest, or for whatever reason they haven't. But I hope it comes along.
And for the people watching this that are interested in UAPs, just as someone that's been in the military and in the police, we hear about them, and we hear that might be multiple visitors with multiple intentions. What are your whole thoughts that we might be visited? And do you think if we are visited, that it could be from multiple places and they might not all have the same agenda?
Oh, that's definitely, that's definitely a strong possibility. I mean, it's almost like we've been conditioned since we were little through these movies to, whether it's extraterrestrials, we've kind of being brought along this one way. And it wouldn't shock me in the least if it didn't play out the way, obviously, that these movies, which were created by people, sort of portrayed it to play out. And I've always heard that where, there would be sort of, or could be potentially, a struggle between different non-earthly entities. And why would there be only one, or one type, or one group with one goal? Certainly that's something that I could see.
And I've heard various explanations to this, but there is evidence that we have been visited for a very long time. And I'm sorry for the more normal people watching this, but for us that research the UAP subject, why would they only be showing up more now and more interested in us and potentially more of a threat to us now than they have been in the past, in your opinion?
Well, that is a good question. They could be sensing that things here are changing. I would assume they would have technology to analyze either the Earth itself, the Earth's core, some of the energies, or maybe the warfare that's going on. They could have information and knowledge. If they're visiting us, I wouldn't be surprised that there wouldn't be humans relaying information to them. So they could be aware of what's going on Earth, and between the COVID viruses and a lot of the unrest that's been going on, I would gather that could be it.
If you had to narrow it down to one, Nature Guy is wondering, what would make the absolute most sense to you about what's going on?
That it is a private company that people in the federal government have given permission to perform some sort of analysis or tests on New Jersey, but the United States. And I would say of all of them, the likelihood that is the case, mostly based off of how they're behaving, and then our general federal government's super slow response and some of the statements they've made. That's where I would say I would lean the most, that it is a private company, that our federal government is aware exactly who they are and what they're doing, but don't want to tell us, or perhaps tell the people, that those drones are actually looking for or targeting. It could be a security issue.
And do you think that they're most highly being seen around the New York, New Jersey area because those are the most densely populated areas of the U.S.? Or do you think it just has to do with the ocean, or a combination of both?
Oh, that is a very good. I've been wondering that all along. Like, what is so special about New Jersey? Now, remember, the only thing I could say that would make it unique in this area is, I mean, in New York City, they have things floating around all the time everywhere. So they might not even notice. And I'm sure there are some floating, New York City and northern New Jersey are, right there, in very close proximity. But why would they come out to, like, where I am? I'm like maybe 40 minutes from New York City. I live in a mountain, sort of mountainous area here. Even a little bit further out, they've been spotted. So it's not like they're only in the cities or the big cities, or in fact, it seems they're predominantly a lot of the videos I'm seeing, they're more in suburban areas. So they're more in neighborhoods and whatnot. And unfortunately, the clue that would lead me there is that they have information that there is something. People either came into this country or people have some sort of plans, and this is where they're looking for them. These people may have driven, they might have a truck, they might have various vehicles, and that would explain why, now that they might, fan out. They might go to Connecticut, they might go to Maryland. A couple of them were in Philly, so they might be looking for where these potential individuals have traveled.
And what do you think they're attracted to if it is visitors? We always hear that they're attracted to like nuclear silos, nuclear power plants, places where they create material to make these nuclear weapons. What do you think the attraction is to that type of thing?
They could have sensors and be sort of sensing these things. I mean, it is a high value, high risk, military bases, and clearly, well, they know what they're looking at. So, and they know where they're going. They're not just randomly roaming around. But I mean, they are attracted to those places probably because they have the senses that there's something special there or dangerous.
Are you surprised the AARO hasn't made a comment about this, since they're supposed to be the ones investigating this stuff? Even I know this, it's been happening about a month now, and
Yes.
that's the section of the government that's supposed to be in charge of this, and we haven't heard anything.
Yes. All these things, all that silence is why I keep saying they're just biding their time, because when the COVID issue was potentially coming around, we were hearing about it before people were even here getting sick, and it was being addressed constantly and regularly, daily. Even our governor was having daily press conferences on every little detail. It was a full force movement, and we haven't heard from the president, and only now today have we heard from the future president. And we're not hearing from any of these authorities in any way. And one of the best ways to not lie or to not get caught up in lying is to not even say a word. So they're probably not addressing it so that they don't have to be involved and they don't have to cover up or lie.
Yeah, I've heard other people say that as well, that the silence is definitely telling. But I appreciate your time. I mean, there's going to be tons of news on this.
Yep.
Maybe you could come back next week and
Okay.
we'll jump into this again, because we probably had, I'm not exaggerating this, thousands of comments, and I didn't even ask a fraction of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to get to the gym, and I'm sure you're busy, so I'll let you close this off with whatever your thoughts are here for now. And thanks again. And thank you for your service.
All right. Thank you, sure. Appreciate that, Hannibal. Hey, just keep our eyes in the skies and eyes on the prize, man. We'll make it through this, and I'm curious where it goes. So let's keep it up.